everybody, please welcome Nikki Miller, who is going to be joining us today. And we're going to be talking a lot about the one thing. Here's the cool thing about Nikki, and she'll give you a little bit of her own background, but she has held probably almost every leadership position in the Keller ecosystem of market centers, teams, runs a lot of things, and is now the co-host of the One Thing podcast, which is a pretty cool place to be. So Nikki, tell us all a little bit about yourself, and I know your quick 30-second journey to how you ended up on the One Thing podcast as co-host.
Yeah, I started in KW. I always sort of joke, like I grew up here, been here for a long time. So joined the company when I was 20 years old, and am very thankful for that. And started as an agent and sort of graduated into becoming a team leader. Saw a real gap there in terms of how we serve individual agents in my tenure there, which is when I left to go and build the Lead Syndicate, which is a leverage platform that's exclusively and specifically designed for individual agents. We serve agents in over 160 locations in 29 states now, and also in, I think it was family reunion last year, actually. So this is probably our anniversary. Family reunion last year, went to Jay and said, "Hey, I really want to go and build a podcast where I have the opportunity to meet authors and learn from really successful people, and then can share that knowledge through a recording." That's to me what podcasts are. It's just conversations with really incredible people that you get to share. And so I said, "I know you have the One Thing podcast, Jay. Can I just get some time with you? I have some super specific questions on how to build this." And being the incredibly generous human being he is, he gave it to me. And after going through those questions with each other, we sort of looked up and said, "Hey, why don't we just do this together? Why don't you just come on to the One Thing podcast? And this is an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity for you." And it sort of worked out. And fast forward, now we're here. So it's been an incredible journey and an incredible opportunity for me to use what have been principles I've used in business and in life for a long time. And now that I get to have even more conversations with, which just solidify them even more for me, all the principles of the One Thing, the tools of the One Thing. And it's just been a real privilege to get to be a part of it.
That's awesome. And you didn't know you were being CV'd at the time. Who knew? Right? Happens even secretly.
Well, I always joke. I was like, "Oh, it was an accident." Jay's like, "It's not an accident." And I was like, "Oh, sorry." Who knew?
Right. He's like, no, that was very intentional.
Yeah,
He's like,
very
fell right
intentional.
into my trap. That's how,
Exactly.
well, that's how it goes. When it's so good, you don't even notice that it's happening.
Exactly.
So let's talk about our folks here, right? So when we
Mm-hmm.
look at B2B talent, what we do, we're in the people development business.
Yep.
And a lot of our viewers on here and the folks who are going to watch us recording, they are either in some kind of a leadership position, they are in the leadership pod of a market center, or possibly in a team and thinking about, right, maybe I'm going to hire my first hire. And so we know as entrepreneurs, we get in that messy middle, and sometimes we forget that, hey, being a leader above all else is what helps us work through people. And that's actually how we build a big business. You can be a solo agent and sell a ton of real estate, but you don't have a business at that point. We only have a business when it can operate through other people. And yet we kind of fight some of those things. And I love how the One Thing connects into this, because when we look at how to lead, and I find this a lot when I'm working with coaching clients or when I'm speaking or teaching with people. I'm like, well, reference this page and reference this page and get out your one thing and look at the 7 circles, right? There's so much there that we can lean on when it comes to developing ourselves and developing others. And when you look at the One Thing, because obviously you have to embody Jay's not putting somebody in the One Thing podcast that does not live and breathe the One Thing.
Sure.
When you look at the One Thing, where would you start if you were helping somebody that's on this leadership journey at any stage, and they come to you and they say, "Nikki, I went in this class with Liz and she was adamant that I had to get the One Thing and start integrating some of this into and the concepts from it into my business." Where's the first place you would lead them on there?
That's a great question, Liz. There's a triangle, and every time I talk about the triangle, people think about leads, listings, leverage. I'm talking about a different triangle. There's the triangle of the One Thing, which at the base of the triangle, it's really, if you look at the graphic in the One Thing, it's more an iceberg, right? Whereas below the surface is our purpose. And that's the biggest base. In other words, who do we want to be? What do we want to do with that? How do we want to show up in the world? And then that purpose defines our priorities, right? The purpose defines our priorities, which then defines our productivity. And so I think where a lot of leaders get it wrong is they try to go from the top of the triangle to the bottom. In other words, they don't make a decision about who they want to be, and therefore cannot make a decision about who their organization wants to be, what their organization's purpose is, which makes it very challenging to define your priorities, which then means that your productivity will never be in alignment. And so when I look up with a lot of agents and leaders who say, I don't know why, I feel like I'm working really hard, like throw it in the chat if this resonates with you. I feel like I'm working really hard, but I'm spinning my wheels. I'm not making the progress that I feel like I should be based off the output that I have. And then what I'll often do is just take them to that triangle and I'll work through what is the actual purpose? What are you trying to do? And this is beyond just, I'm trying to sell more houses, right? That one's the obvious, but what is your organization going to stand for? Why are you here? And then that defines priority, which then defines our productivity, which is how we are going to execute that. What is the action? And then the priority is how we're going to align that and in what order. And if there was any page in the one thing that I could direct someone to that they could use beyond some of the great models like the GPS and the 411, which a lot of the people who are listening to this are probably familiar with, but beyond those, I would guide someone to that first, because without that, without defining your purpose and therefore your organization's purpose, you can't hope to define everything else. And a lot of people try to work backwards through that. They try to just be really productive. But if you don't know what you're working towards, you're never going to get there. My explanation to a lot of people is a ship that has no direction or has no destination in mind doesn't care which way the wind blows. And so you have to make a decision about what that's going to be in order for your people to make clear decisions about what that's going to be.
I think that's so interesting when you look at that, because I'll tell you, I've talked to a lot of folks who love the one thing, read it, live it, coaches reference it all the time, right? We've got post-it after post-it note. Never once has somebody actually gone to the iceberg example of it. Never once has somebody done that. They go to the 80-20 principle, they go to the 7 circles. Like I tend to go and I say, like, the 7 circles is huge, right? I relate a lot to that, and I find a lot of the conversations I do, but never the iceberg. And I think that's so interesting, because that is one of the struggles that we see with leadership and guiding others is, even if I know my purpose, right? I'm clear on it. Are the people in my world clear on it? Have they done the work to get them there?
100%.
Like, they know that part.
Yeah. And here's the biggest challenge. I think that often, and this is part of what the CV process works through, is that when you actually get somebody to the future vision of themselves, what you're really asking them, like to its core, what I believe that you're trying to get out of that is, what is that person's purpose? What are they trying to do while they're here? And then the question that we ask in that exercise is, how does that align with your organization's purpose? Well, if you don't know, then the worst part about that is that you could be hiring someone feeling like they're the right fit, but they're not, because their ultimate purpose is out of alignment with what your organization's ultimate purpose is. And the bigger challenge that I think that when we as human beings don't know our own purpose, we don't know the reason that we're here and who we want to be while we walk around this big rock, right? That we don't know our own priorities. And so therefore we cause chaos. We don't know our purpose, therefore we don't know priority. And therefore we spin our wheels in productivity because we're not actually sure what we're trying to achieve or where we're trying to go or why we're trying to do it. And so we spin our wheels or we self-sabotage or whatever it may be. It shows up a lot of different ways. And so, yes, there's a ton of tools and productivity tools inside the one thing that I would highly recommend that everybody use. But if you don't know why you're doing it, and you don't know what your values are, and if you don't know if it's in alignment with who you want to be while you're here, then you're probably going to get off track, or at worst, you'll succeed at whatever the goal it is that you set out for, and it won't mean anything to you because it's out of alignment with who you're meant to be and who you want to be.
Well, we see that happen all the time, right? People
All the time.
go and they run, they find themselves being really successful in something, and they pursue these things because they saw somebody else do it, and yet it doesn't to their core actually serve their ultimate purpose. And they get to the destination and they look around and they go, well, I don't
This is
want
it.
Yeah, this is it. What does this do for me? This isn't where I wanted to be. Unfortunately, we see a lot of people build teams that end up there, and I'm like, do you actually
100%.
want this?
Yep.
Like, is this actually something that serves what you want? And how do we do that? So let's keep rolling with this part of the conversation. Let's imagine there's somebody on here watching this video that goes, ooh, I've never really paid attention to the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Or I know I've got a leader in my business that really needs to discover their purpose. They're very lost. How do we start that journey to figure it out?
Well, one of the ways that we do it in the one thing is we go through a purpose statement, which if you've ever been through Quantum Leap is very, very similar to a mission statement that you would identify in Quantum Leap. So I would highly recommend that if you haven't taken that class that you do. Another exercise that we do, which you can find on theonething.com, is our values exercise. And the values exercise basically takes a lot of words that are available, and you go through and yeah, there you go. So you get the core value deck, exactly. You got it, and then you're
Sits right
going
here
to
on my desk, right next to my Phil Jones,
100%.
exactly what to say cards. You got to have some handy tools when you're working, right?
There you go. So, and then you go through that and you identify the values that resonate with you most. Now, here's where a lot of people get trouble. My high achievers, especially, I'm like talking to you because this was a big challenge for me. Most achievers will try to choose aspirational values. And what I mean by that is they're like, well, I want to be a great leader. But if we stress test, I say, if you look backwards at your life and this didn't happen, will it be worth nothing? Like, what really resonates with you? What if somebody doesn't do it really upsets you? And more often than not, those things that we want to be our values are not actually our values. They're aspirational values. So what then we have to do is pay attention to who we naturally are, because if we try to fight that, then we're going to find problems everywhere we turn. And here's the benefit of it. You also then know where your hot buttons are and where you may be hot buttons for other people. Like I have everybody in my organization go through this exercise, and here's why. The best way for me to explain this is actually an example of a trainer who's inside the One Thing. So his number one value is fun. That's like his very first value. And you order them by most important in order of importance. Number one is fun. His wife's number one value is efficiency. So you can imagine that if a partner's value, romantic or otherwise, number one value is fun and another one is efficiency, like you guys are going to have a fight. And without an ability to name why you're fighting, you're going to have a problem because this person values fun and therefore will want to bring fun into everything. This person values efficiency and therefore is going to want to do things quickly and in the most efficient manner. Well, you put those two people together in really stressful situations, and they're probably just going to upset each other, right? Because they don't have a common language to say, oh, your fun value is showing up right now because you're stressed, and my efficiency value is showing up right now because I'm stressed. So above all, this teaches you how to communicate and also helps you to fill out your team, right? And here's what I mean by that. My number one value is authenticity. So I am going to tell you the truth, whether you like the truth or not, right? Like I will always tell you the truth because my number one value is authenticity. And part of that for me shows up as not only me being who I am, but the expectation that other people will be who they are. The challenge with that is that can get in your way as a leader because you have to learn how to deliver that type of information, right? So I know this about myself. It creates an awareness for me. And therefore, I know when I'm going into a high stress situation, my number one value is authenticity, but I have to be cautious because I'm going to tell the truth no matter what in that situation. I'm going to show up as myself no matter what in that situation. But not everybody is going to receive the truth the way that I would receive the truth because that's not their number one value. So I say all that to say this, the most important part is you knowing yourself as you are, as you were put here to be, right? And not fighting against that. Most people are born and able to greatness, and they don't get there because they lost their way or they fought themselves along the way. So really, this is me shining a light on you need to go and be who you are and lean into what comes naturally to you and what you're naturally good at, right? And then you need to surround yourself inside your team, if that's what it is your goal to build, with other people who fill out the areas that you maybe are not as strong. And that's how you build a really exceptional team. That's how you create the Avengers, right? And so ultimately, what I advise to leaders is you have to understand your purpose. You have to know your purpose statement. You have to know your values, because you might look up at that and say, man, to your point earlier, Liz, like building a team's not for me. I mean, I start with this question every time when somebody comes to me and says, should I build a team? I'm like, I don't know. Do you want to build a team? Like, do you
Right.
want to do that
What
truly?
does that
Because
do
it's
for
really
you and your
hard.
long-term goals? Yeah.
Exactly. Because it's really hard. And if it doesn't resonate with your purpose, you're probably going to quit. So you should just know that ahead of time. Because if it does resonate with your purpose, you'll be able to stick through the hard stuff much easier.
Well, and I think that's some of the hard work that people don't do, right? It's the work before the work. It's work to
Yeah.
figure run a business, but it's a lot of work to figure out, do I need to even be in this arena as well? And I always talk about the only reason any two people are in business together is they believe that by doing such, they can achieve their goals quicker and easier. The
Sure.
goal is not necessarily the production of the business. The goal is what's the purpose, right? Like, what is their purpose? Like, what does this actually do for them? And if the purposes aren't in alignment, right, it doesn't have to mean they're the same. They have to be in alignment. If we're not in alignment and it doesn't help them reach their purpose and it doesn't help me reach my purpose, and you said something else in there of you value authenticity, right? Like, you're going to show up, this is how you show up, and it doesn't mean other people receive it that way. So you have to be careful and understand how you deliver that, right? There's the challenge
Sure.
of how do I deliver this in a way that people will be receptive to it? And I think that's a huge thing for people to hear, because we have this tendency as assertive drivers, we almost wear some of our personality profiles like a badge of honor of, I am this, I am a 10 on assertiveness, or I'm a 0 on sociability, or I have no optimism, right? We look at those markers, or the old AVA numbers, right? We take a pride in it. And that's great, except for the fact of it doesn't justify bad behavior around that,
100%. Yep.
right? And yet sometimes we can look at it and be like, well, that's just who I am. And so that's what it's going to be because this is me. And that's not acceptable in leadership. We can't do that.
No, it's so funny that you say this, Liz. I was actually just having this conversation with a very dear friend of mine who runs a huge organization. And she said something to the effect we were on the phone this morning, and she said, well, that's just my personality. And I said, that might be true, but that's not the personality of the person who's on the other side of the table, who you made a promise to that you would be able to get them to where they wanted to go so long as they did their part. And they're doing their part. And what I'm hearing is that you are breaking your promise simply because you don't have the courage to adapt your communication style. That's all I'm hearing. And the challenge with leadership is that we don't ever get to be the leader that we want to be. We have to be the leader that our people need. And so a lot of times I'll say something like this, and then people are like, wait, but you just said your number one value is authenticity. It is. And my promise to people when they join my organization is that we're going to go through a process to understand if they can be better, become better, and achieve their goals by being a part of this organization. And my authenticity would not allow me to bring them into the organization if I didn't fundamentally believe that that was possible. That said, I can't communicate how I want to communicate if they don't communicate or receive that way and hope to get them there. So my overall promise and my authenticity in getting them to where they want to go supersedes how I want to communicate. Nobody cares what your communication and personality style is. Like, you can wear it as your badge of honor all you want, and ultimately all that's going to do is get in your way of being an amazing leader and being able to communicate effectively.
Yeah, it will turn people off, right?
Mm-hmm.
There might be a very small segment of people that it resonates with who are like, yes, that's me, I'm there. But
Totally.
ultimately, your pool of talent, your relationships that you can have, they will dwindle, and we will burn a lot of bridges along that way.
Absolutely.
By the way, we all learned that from personal experience, just so everyone here knows. It's not like
Yep.
we were all born and said, hey, I have the self-awareness that I need to speak to people differently. If we go and talk to 23-year-old Liz when she started her real estate team, you're going to see a very different Liz. Where I was overseeing over 20 people, uh, I can't even fathom why somebody put me in charge of that. Like that is horrifying to me that I was in charge. I had zero leadership skills. I had a lot of self-awareness of who I was, but like Nikki said, it was my badge of honor. Well, this is who I am, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
this is just me, and I'm successful at this, which is why they put me in this role. And if you don't like it, too bad. That doesn't fly, right? That
Nope.
doesn't fly if we want to actually accomplish things through others and build a big world.
Well, here's
And
the thing. It'll work for a short period of time. I think that's the trick. Like, and that's where some people fall prey to behaving this way, is that it will actually work for a very short period of time, but it won't work long term because eventually nobody's going to want to work with you. And you can't hope to build a lasting business without longevity in your team. And so I like, if you go back to, I took my first really big leadership role at 25, and I was the same. I was like, I am going to hit this goal, win this game, do the thing with or without. It didn't matter. And I was going to like take no prisoners on the way. And by the way, I still feel that way about the goals that I have, but I've learned to wrap my arms around people and get them the right seat on the rocket ship on the way. And if you can't do that, you have no hope to hit those big goals that you have.
Yeah, you'll be really good at a job, right?
Yeah,
You'll be really good at a job. You won't necessarily have a business that's going to hit the huge goals and build the big life that
for sure.
you may want, right? That's actually driving you. So Nikki, you're going to be at family reunion, and I know you're doing some stuff while you're there. Share with our folks so that they know, since they're going to Vegas with us, where are you going to be at family reunion? What are you hosting, and what's kind of the subject about for that if they want to take a look at that and meet you up at family reunion?
Yeah, so we have on Sunday, we have the One Thing happy hour. Sadly, I think it's sold out. So unfortunately, I don't think that we have any more space left on that one. But Sunday, I'll be at the One Thing happy hour. Monday morning, this is going to be so cool. If y'all don't know who Cody Sanchez is, I got a big old girl crush on her. She's incredible. She has a huge online following and focuses on buying and building what she calls boring businesses. It's these highly scalable, leverageable small businesses that she purchases and then values and grows, and she owns in her portfolio. And Jay Papasan and I are going to be interviewing her, doing a live interview for the One Thing podcast, and that's on Monday morning. And then immediately after that, this I know is going to be live streamed in some of the market centers too. But we are doing the magic of getting anything you want, which is basically taking One Thing principles and using them to work backwards from quite literally any goal that you want. You can do and be and have and achieve literally anything you want. There are no rules here. We are all making this up as we go, but there are rules to success that you can follow. And literally all you have to do is work backwards from that big dream that you have into how you need to show up today and what needs to happen today in order for you to repeat enough of those that you pick your head up and you're exactly where you want to be. So that's what we're going to be talking about there. Let's see, what else am I at? On Tuesday, I believe. Tuesday. I am doing from the value stage in the afternoon. I am doing Whose Life Are You Leading? So this is around quantum leap principles. And frankly, it's probably the most powerful question that Gary ever asked me. He's like, whose life are you leading? And I was like, mine, you dummy. And then he asked me the second most important question, which is, how do you know? Like, what specific evidence do you have that you're leading your own life? So this is very in alignment with this purpose that I was talking about today. Very, very foundational in my own personal life and leadership journey. So I'd encourage you to come to that. And then right after that, I will be at the KW Next Gen, formerly was KW Kids Can. And they're rebranding and they're doing a launch party. So I'll be right after that event. I think that's it. I think that's all I got for family reunion.
You're not busy at all. You're not busy at all.
Lots of free time.
It's going to be an easy week. Yeah. I know the feeling. So if there was some words of wisdom. So first of all, for everybody on here and watching, please go to those sessions if you're struggling with any of those things, right? Setting and reaching goals, following a model to actually achieve your goals, struggling with your purpose, looking at it and saying, well, now that Nikki says it, I'm not actually sure whose life I'm leading, but I'm doing a lot of things and I'm really busy, but it doesn't feel very fulfilling. These are some of the sessions that you need to be at. So check them out. The app launched this morning, I think, live, ready to go. So everyone should be able to get into the app. Otherwise, it's on the KW Events website. But Nikki, if you were going to leave with like the last thing, the moral of the story you want somebody to get out of here, your mic drop moment before we wrap up, we've got 2 minutes left. What would that be for them?
I think in this context, my advice to most leaders is that it's not fair ever to hold people accountable to something that you never told them you were holding them accountable to. In other words, if you've got a clear vision in your head and your heart of what you want the business to become, it's only fair that you share that with your team and then use the models that are available to you through the One Thing and outside of that to work everybody backwards into how they need to show up to be in alignment with that today. Because what I see most from leaders is they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm feeling burned out, or I feel like I'm spinning my wheels, or I feel like I'm, I'm not making the progress that I want to be making. And almost always it comes back to the leaders that are in real pain are the ones that have a vision of what they want their business and their life to look like. They have the standards. They know what they want to have happen, but they've never worked backwards into a standard to how to make that happen with their people. They know how to do it, but they haven't been able to articulate how to have other people do it around them. And that's the gift. That's what you have to do as a leader. And ultimately, you can't hope that anyone will do those things intuitively. You have to let them know.
I think that's huge, right? Holding somebody accountable to something that they don't know you're holding them accountable for is not a win-win situation.
Which, by the way, like, we're all guilty of this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, we've all done this. I don't know about y'all, but like I'm married, and I've totally had in my head before, like, what I wanted my husband to do about something. And then he doesn't do it. And I very unfairly, I'm like, well, why didn't you do it that way? Or why didn't you do that thing? And he's like, well, what, you never told me that you wanted that, or to do it that way, or whatever it might be. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't. So it's not fair for me to get upset about it. And we do the same thing as leaders. We expect that everybody lives in our heads. They don't. We have to articulate it if it matters to us.
I call it great expectations. I was just teaching
Yeah.
in Orlando 2 weeks ago for Georgia Alpazar, and I remember saying that. I was like, well, let's talk about great expectations. Expectations are this beautiful picture that we paint ourselves in our head that we are very clear on. We know the color of the leaves, we know where the sun is shining, we know where the hills roll, and then we spit it out of our mouth, and it's like, well, there's some grass, there might be a tree somewhere, I need the trash taken out, right? Like,
Exactly.
it's not, we're not clear exactly on the expectation and what the standard is on that of how we want people to communicate with us, what we expect the goal to be, what the behavior should look like, the tasks we want accomplished. We are all very guilty of that. It's
Yep.
easy to see in personal relationships, really simple, because it's like, oh yeah, like I painted this beautiful picture in my head, and then I failed to tell you this is what I wanted this to look like, right?
Yep.
When it's make the chicken for dinner, well, what does that mean? That can be 1,000 different things. Who knows? So I think that's a great place to look at it. And yeah, that you're right. It's unfair. Someone said to me one time in one of our other interviews, they said, clarity is kind,
Yeah.
lack of clarity is unkind.
Yep.
That's exactly what that is.
For sure. Exactly.
All right. Well, Nikki, thank you. We will respect
My
your
pleasure.
time. You're a minute over at this point. Thank you all for being here today. Next month, we will be going through another expert interview at the end of March. We will send you all information on it. We hope that you can join. If you guys have any questions, any thoughts on this, feel free to post them on Facebook. When we get off of here, this video will get posted there. And if you need anything, as always, you know how to find us, the KW Talent page. Thank you all. Have a great day.